We had a good night. We got along.
Right, there's a history there.
But seeing her and Dylan around the villa, and they look really good, they look strong. I feel more with Sophie.
Yeah.
I would have chose her above Kayla, but Kayla, that conversation.
If I said I was devastated that Chrissy's gone home, I'd be lying, and I don't want to be called a liar. Because at the end of the day, she played herself. She came into the villa and was interested in boys that she knew were not available and thought she would be able to turn their heads. And sadly, that didn't work out so great for her. She went after Dylan, even though she had complained to Taylor that Dylan was clinging to Sophie, which meant that he wasn't really 100% for her. And she still did that. And when it didn't work out, she scrambled. And then she started running after every single guy and wasn't 100% committed to anyone because she kept talking to Taylor and then she would talk to Nico. She'd run and talk to the Eggman, what's his name, Tommy. And so she never fixed herself to someone. And this is why she's gone home. Do I think it was a good idea to bring Hannah back in? No, I don't. Because Hannah was the mean girl of the villa. I don't know whether the producers did it for ratings or what they did it, or whether they felt that none of the other girls would be as better a villain. That's why they've brought her back. It doesn't make sense. And surprisingly, birds of a feather flock together, because you can see in people's tendencies the fact that Kayla is just as mean as Hannah and is saying she's a league above, Zanti and Sophie doesn't make sense, as much as I'm not Sophie's best cheerleader at the moment. And also for Taylor to behave the way he behaved, to go from hugging and kissing on Chrissy to jumping ship and going to Hannah, shows who he is. Zayn and Taylor are birds of a feather. And the audacity for Zayn to have a conversation about what happened with him and Sophie in front of everyone, not to Dylan, but to the rest of the guys, doesn't make sense to me. Dylan deserved the respect of him pulling Dylan aside and having a conversation. Unless the producers said, don't speak to him, we want to wait until the truth bite. Otherwise, I don't get why he didn't do anything. And Sophie as well, I'm very disappointed. I'm very disappointed in Sophie. Anyway, hey there. Thanks for stopping by. It's your girl, Valerie. Welcome to my channel. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe. Click the like button. Turn on the notification bell for when I upload new videos. And definitely leave a comment. In this episode, I'll be reviewing Love Island, Australia, Season 6, Episode 19. Oh, before I forget, thank you everyone who's commented. I will try and respond to your comments as soon as I get a moment. I'm a bit busy, but I will definitely try and respond, hopefully starting tomorrow, but definitely by Sunday I will have responded. Anyway, the islanders come back from Hotel Amor, and this is what I think. The producers already, as I said yesterday, have their top 3, top 4, or top 5. So you have the people come back in the order that they went out. But surprisingly, Sophie and Zayn and Taylor and Chrissy come in last, and it's as though they wanted Dylan and Mimi to be sitting down so that they could sort of eye Sophie and Zayn when they came in, because Sophie couldn't even look at Dylan, and it's like, why are you afraid to look at him? Why are you afraid? What have you done? Anyway, so you have Sophie Monk. She's already there. She tells them, okay, you can either stick or twist. So you can either stick with the person that you're coupled up with at the moment, or you can twist. And so they start in the order that the people came in. They start off with Mia and Nico. The way Mia pronounces Nico is to make sure that we all know how to pronounce it properly with a Greek accent. But anyway, the way Mia pronounces Nico, it's as though she wants us all to know how to pronounce it properly with a Greek accent. Anyway, so Nico and Mia are the first up. Is it a surprise who they're choosing to pick? No. As soon as they met, they said they didn't want to get to know anyone else and they were going to stick. So no surprise there that they decided to stick. Next up is M and Mercedes. M had an amazing time. Mercedes said he really got to know, M inside and out. And it's like, yeah, he really did. We saw it. And so am I surprised that they decided to stick? No, because they don't have any other option. M had Taylor, but, she's had an amazing time with Mercedes. I don't think she's going to ever consider, doing anything or having anything to do with Taylor. Next up, we have Kayla and Steph. They stand up. They both agree that they were a random couple. They don't understand how the superfans chose them. And this is what I think. I think Chrissy didn't want to go with Steph. Chrissy didn't want to go with Dylan. And so they had to cater to Chrissy's needs. And so by so doing, they had to randomly pair this couple up, because it doesn't make sense how they paired them up. Chrissy complained that, Steph was inappropriate with her. She liked Dylan, but Dylan didn't like her, so she was already sleeping downstairs, so there was no way they were going to send her away with Dylan. So this was a random pick. Are we surprised that they both decided to twist? No, they were never going to stick because they hadn't had any conversations. There was no flirting, nothing, no chats at all, so it didn't make sense for them as a couple. Mimi was very nervous before Steph said he was going to stick, so she had Dylan sort of consoling her. And then as soon as, they said Steph wants to twist, she immediately stood up. They hugged, they kissed, they were a couple. Sophie can barely look Dylan in the face. Next up was Kayla, and Zane was sort of pretending. Zane, in my opinion, played Sophie. He wanted to show Sophie who's the boss. That's my opinion, and I'm going to stick to it. He wanted to show her who's the boss. He wanted to show her that I can have you if I want, but I don't want you. And so this is why he did whatever they did in Hotel Amour, and the producers got to get what they wanted. Because last season, they tried to get Georgia to sleep with Trent, and Georgia refused because the following morning, she woke up and she ran back to Nate. And sadly for Sophie, she lacked the self-control enough to say no to this man. And because it was just the two of them, and the fact that there are 2 bottles of wine, I don't know whether it was just an overnight stay. I don't know. I don't know what happened. I don't want to excuse, I don't want to blame it on the alcohol, but the producers were ready for this to happen. And so for Kayla, for her to stand up there, and you have Zane not standing up, and then he later stands up and says it's good for the plot. What do you mean it's good for the plot? What do you mean it's good for the plot? It's either you want to be in a couple with her or you don't. He must have promised Sophie that they were going to couple up. And so the idea that suddenly he is now standing up for someone, you could see Sophie seething. Even Mercedes, he couldn't believe it. Dylan picked up on this. You could tell from the moment Sophie and Zane walked in and they couldn't look him in the eye, he knew something was up. And because he's very calm and very controlled, he didn't say anything. He didn't ask anything. And so when Zane stood up for Kayla, everybody could tell. And you had M seething on behalf of Sophie. And it's like, Sophie knew what she was getting herself into before she got into it. Let us not, pretend she's a victim. I like to call a spade a spade. Yes, I like her, but if it walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, it is a duck. This guy, when she came in, didn't give her the time of day. And then eventually, when she sat down with him, he told her, no, I'm happy in my couple with Zanti. I'm good. So they shut it down. He then went to Kayla and said Kayla is a 10 and is happy to be with a 10. And then now for him to suddenly say, I don't want Kayla anymore. I have a feeling he realized that Sophie was moving on and he just wanted to show her who's the boss. He really did. And so for him to say that he doesn't feel his partner and then go and break up another couple doesn't make sense to me, because I don't think Dylan is going to tolerate this. And if he does, Sophie is going to have a lot of work to do in order to win him, because this is unacceptable. I am devastated on Dylan's behalf. I am devastated because nobody deserves that. Next up is Dylan. And Dylan is so cool. I hope I'm as cool as he is when I grow up, even though I'm a grown up. Anyway, so Dylan is told that, since Mimi, twisted, he is single because he wasn't in a couple. Well, Alicia was in another couple. Well, she had uncoupled herself with him, but technically she was still in a couple with him anyway. So he's asked, how did things go with Mimi and you? And he told them the truth. Because with Mimi, it was actually a rehabilitation event for the two of them, because they were able to address reasons as to why they didn't work as a couple, and to sort of reach an understanding that they can be friends and they can move on and still be okay. And so it was a healing moment for them going on this, Casa Amour, Hotel Amour. And I wish Sophie and Zane had done the same. So you then have Sophie Monk ask, Steph, how did you feel? And he says, I was afraid, because look at Dylan. He's a very good looking guy. I am good looking, but Dylan is, just as good looking. So I would have been lying if I said I wasn't threatened. Mimi was happy. She's doing heart signs for him. And you can see on Mercedes's face that Mercedes knows that something happened. He knows something happened. And I am glad that Dylan stood up there, because he was asked, how did you feel when Sophie went with Zane? And he told the truth, and he said, I would be lying if I said that I wasn't afraid, because obviously they have a history that they had before they walked into the villa. And so I knew that there was something there, and I would have always questioned if it was still there. And so it depends on what Sophie did, whether she stuck to her word, because she told Dylan that she had moved on and that there was nothing there. So the idea that suddenly there is something there, oh my God, it's about to be messy. And so you could tell as soon as I acknowledged Dylan that he said it in front of everyone. That way everybody knew that he knows that something ain't right. There's something in the water, but he doesn't know what it is. And so he's going to find out. When he finds out, Mercedes is looking like, oh my God, what happened? And so I give him credit that he didn't kiss Sophie on the lips, because he wants to know, he has questions and he needs answers, and he knows that his intuition is telling him something is not right. And you can tell when something is not right, because if people are not looking at you in the eye, if people are avoiding you and are moving messy, then you know something is wrong. So they sat down and Sophie's sort of holding on to him. They were asked, you know, were you going to twist or were you going to stick? And they both say we're going to twist. And it's like, nah, I don't think that's what the two of you agreed upon, because your facial expressions are saying otherwise. And Zane, for someone who is that old and knows about bro code, for him to not maintain it, I can't wait for this villa to go up in flames. But the problem is, even though Dylan is aggrieved, if he does or says anything, the public is going to blame him. Next up is Chrissy and Taylor. This was messy, but it was needed. It was needed, because at the end of the day, Taylor never had to make a choice. He's always gone after girls that were interested in him. And so he's never had the choice to sort of pick someone and couple up with them. So I'm happy that this has happened. Anyway, so Chrissy is asked first. She says, you know, we had an amazing time. We discovered we had a connection. And so I would like to, you know, stick to Taylor, because obviously she has no other option. When it's Taylor's turn, he's told, okay, before you make a decision, just one moment. And they bring back Hannah. I feel like the producers have their top four, and I'm going to name it. Their top four is going to be Taylor and Hannah, Nico and Mia, and Mercedes. And I think they would have wanted a Sophie and Zane coupling, and I think that's their top four. That's who they want to be in their top four, because of what the events that have played out, because of how messy they've been to try and sort of sabotage other connections. So for Taylor to choose to couple up with Hannah, I'm not surprised. I really am not surprised. And for the producers to decide to bring back Hannah doesn't make any sense. So they had enough money to hire all those bungalows and the hotel, but they did not have money to have Casa Amor, where they would just hire a little sort of a bungalow and put everybody in it and bring people from Australia. Make it make sense. And so I am not buying this mess. All this hoopla was just created so that Taylor and Hannah could couple up, because at the end of the day, the producers didn't want to send Hannah home. Hannah is good TV for them. She brings the toxicity, the messiness that they need. So I'm not surprised. So the audacity for Taylor to go from hugging and being right under, you know, Chris's armpit to suddenly standing aside away from her doesn't make sense. So he chose to couple up with Hannah, and then he's playing victim and is having the other villain in the villa, Zane, sort of consoling him. And it's like, everybody called Dylan the menace, the villain, everything. And yet we had two villains sitting there. And I can't wait to see or hear people dragging them out, because nobody's been dragging them. And yet we had someone who was dragged for not doing anything at all, but just being himself. He sat there and allowed the girls to sort of pass him around like he was a hot potato. And people criticized him for being passed around. And yet you've got these guys that are messing about with the girls and no one is saying anything. Make it make sense? Sophie Monk reveals that Chrissy has been dumped just because Taylor has decided to couple up with Hannah, and everyone is consoling her because she's devastated. So she's asked, do you have anything to say? And she says, you know, I was really here for love, and sadly I didn't get a fair chance. And it's like, you spread yourself thin. That's the problem. In my opinion, that was her main problem. When she went to Nico, she should have told Nico that I'm just focused on you and I'm going to go after you. That would have been enough. But the problem is, she was talking to Nico, she was talking to Steph, she was talking to Dylan, she was talking to Taylor. She was trying to fill out everywhere. And so nobody wanted to be a second option. And this is why she struggled up until the very end. You have Taylor now asking to have a conversation with her. And it's like, why do you want to talk to her? Really, why do you want to talk to her? What? Because she called you a liar and she told you that you were fake. I don't think Taylor, Taylor, in my opinion, is a master manipulator in his relationships and is used to getting away with a lot from the girls that he's dated. He didn't expect Love Island to actually show him for who he is, because he sits down with her and sort of tries to apologize and tries to explain himself after begging to speak to her. And it's like, this doesn't make sense. There's no need for you to force this girl to speak to you. There's no need for you to say you want to speak to her because of the comment that she made that you were fake. You are trying to revamp your image, but it's too late because you've had M call you out. You've had Chrissy call you out. So everybody that watches this show is seeing you for who you are. No one is believing the good guy image that you were trying to portray. For her to cry and say, I'm second best, and him to say to her, oh no, you're not. It's just that, I wanted to continue to explore this thing. We didn't get a chance. And it's like, you've been in the villa for a long time with Hannah. You didn't explore that. You were not interested in her because she wasn't showing you interest. Now that she's come back and she's recited whatever she wrote down or whatever script, because it sounded like she was at a recital and she was just regurgitating whatever she had memorized. That was her speech to him, and somehow he ate that up. And it's like, this was so predictable that he was going to pick her, because there's no way the producers would have brought Hannah back only for her to be sent home a second time. That wasn't going to happen. For Kayla, who is supposed to be Chris's best friend, to turn around and say to Hannah, well, there was no way you were being sent home because you're too pretty. And it's like, yes, she might look beautiful physically, but her character is terrible. She's terrible. She's a mean girl. She doesn't deserve to be back in the villa. It's interesting, the mask has fully come off Taylor's face and we're seeing him for who he is exactly, because he goes from, consoling Chrissy and telling her, I just wanted to be genuine, I'm a very good guy, this, that, and the other, I'm so sorry you're going home. And then suddenly he's sitting upstairs with Hannah, he's hugging Hannah, oh, I missed you, and it's like, no, please don't lie. When you were lifting her like a little baby and you're putting her on your lap so that you could kiss her, you didn't say anything about Hannah. So the audacity to suddenly turn around and say, I missed Hannah. When did you miss Hannah? Was it in between the kisses, or was it in between the shower, or was it in between what? Hannah just wants to be on the show. So she's going to do and say anything in order to stay on the show. That's the impression that I get, that she's decided to make drastic moves. I don't think she really liked Nico. I think she got the ick from Nico and decided to go after the bag. So she decided to do something that would give her massive clout from leaving the villa. And I agree with, Chrissy, that they're both there just for clout. In the kitchen, you have Emmy saying, I told you so, this guy ain't it. And he really isn't it, because we're now seeing him for who he is. We're now seeing who the real villains in the villa are. So you have suddenly, Kayla is now best friends again with Chrissy. She's consoling Chrissy, and it's like, but you were just telling Hannah that I knew you were too beautiful to go home. Which is it? Are you Hannah's friend or are you Chris's friend? Make it make sense. I don't get that, and I'm not buying that. Chrissy is packing her bags, and you have Sophie run, and it's like, Sophie, you have bigger fish to fry, love. You have bigger fish to fry. If I were you, I would be going and looking for Dylan and begging Dylan and having conversations with Dylan and owning up to your mess and exactly what you did. Be honest so that he can make an informed decision of whether he wants to stay with you or whether he doesn't. So once Chris is gone, you have people walking around the villa. You have the guys go to get a snack. And so while they're getting a snack, Mercedes could tell something wasn't right. Mimi had already told Steph that she thinks that, Zayn and Sophie hooked up. And so Mercedes asked the questions. And the audacity to say it with his full chest while Dylan is right in front of him doesn't make sense. I don't get the Zayn, because he said, oh yes, the super fans wanted us to kiss, so we kissed. And then we shared another kiss at night, and I was sort of conflicted on who to pick. And it's like, tell the truth, tell the guys everything you did. I would rather you tell Dylan everything you did in front of the other guys. That way, if Dylan loses it, there's people to control him, instead of you keeping quiet and pretending like you are innocent and this is something that just happened that you didn't expect. Dylan is furious because he has spoken to Zayn and asked Zayn, is there still anything there? Because he's protesting his heart. He doesn't want to fall in love with someone, and then he turns around, she's actually not in love with him. So for him to ask Zayn, is there anything, and Zayn to say no, and then he stands there and he went, oh, I was a bit conflicted on who to pick between Sophie and Kayla, because I was about to tell Kayla that there's nothing there, but I felt I owed her a conversation. And it's like, you're waffling all this in front of someone who you know has a connection with the other person. Oh, and I've seen Sophie and Dylan and they get along very well. If you knew they had a strong connection, if you knew they were getting on very well, why did you not pull a Dylan and kiss her on the cheek? Why did you not be a gentleman and sleep in the lounge? No, you didn't. You just wanted to have your cake and eat it. You just wanted to show that you can have her anytime you want her. That's it. So I am not buying your good guy act. I'm not buying anything you're trying to say or do. And kudos to Dylan for sitting down and not responding. Because at one point he had Steph next to him. And I think Steph was just trying to sort of pacify him and tell him, if you react, everybody's going to blame you. It's not going to be a good look for you. Zayn will get away with it, but sadly for someone that looks like you and me, we can't get away with it. So you have to sit there and be calm and just, you know, suck it up. You have Sophie go and sit down with Em and Mimi, and she sort of asked what happened. She said, yes, we kissed once in the hot tub and then we kissed afterwards and we did do some hand stuff. And it's like, something happened, whether it was hand stuff, feet stuff, mouth stuff, whatever, something happened because we heard from the noises that something happened. And sadly for her, we will always assume the worst because we didn't get to see it. She should have stayed in the bedroom if all they were going to do was innocent. But because she did this, now we are left to assume what's happened and we are left to come to our own conclusions. And for the girls to be eating it up and saying they're upset with Zayn, I wish people would sit down. I wish we would have a conversation between Kayla, Zayn, Sophie and Dylan, and they would all air out what happened, and then everyone would be able to make an informed decision. Because you have Zayn pull Kayla for a chat and he's saying, you know, I really don't feel a spark there, and I am not sure whether there's anything sustainable with Sophie. So you knew you didn't have a spark with this girl, but you decided to stand up for her. One, you knew you weren't 100% sure about Sophie. You decided to have sex or whatever else happened between the two of you. Make that make sense. Make that make sense. I don't get it. And I'm not giving Sophie a pass because Sophie is just as guilty because she participated in this mess. She could have pulled a Georgia and said no, but she participated in this mess. So she's as equally responsible as Zayn is. It was never on my bingo card that Kayla was a mean girl. But now I can say it because she's having a conversation with Captain Mean Girl is back with Hannah, and she's sort of saying, you know, Zayn told me that, you know, it's not going anywhere. He doesn't see a spark with me. Besides, he's too young for me. Because she and Zayn have agreed that they're now in a friendship couple. And for them to sort of say, oh, look at me, he fumbled. I'm not in the same league as Sophie and Zanti. And it's like, what a dig. I thought you were friends with Sophie. So how did we go from that to suddenly criticizing her and calling her not your league? This is very, very immature and very petty, because we had Zayn say he was with a 10 and now she is calling herself a 10, but he's dumped you with you being a 10. I don't get it, and I don't understand why people have to bring somebody else in order to lift themselves up. Make it make sense. You have Mercedes and Em go for a chat, and Mercedes and Em are sort of talking, and Mercedes is saying that, you know, Zayn has told us that he and Sophie kissed a couple of times, and it's like, you two should be quiet. This is the same thing. A couple of episodes ago, we had Sophie and Dylan saying they're the strongest couple, jokingly, and saying that we're not in the drama and the producers brought drama to their doorstep. And now the two of you are saying it's either we stay together or we're going home. Well, welcome to Reality Check, because the producers are about to bring drama, because you had Mercedes say, you know, he's not coupling up with anyone else. He doesn't care who walks in. You have Em saying the same thing. And it's like, well, the producers are about to become dramatic. They are going to bring either one of you's exes. So we're just sitting here and we're just going to sip our wine and just drink water and just wait for the drama to begin. So you have Sophie finally go for a conversation with Dylan. And for me, Sophie is playing herself, and her lack of maturity actually shows, because I remember last season Trent was saying, oh, they need to up the age to 22. Well, they've upped the age to 22, and sadly a 21-year-old was way more mature than a 22-year-old at this point in time, because Sophie doesn't realize that she's playing with fire and she's going to get burnt. She sits down with Dylan, has a conversation with Dylan, and tells him, you know, Zayn was telling me that I'm his number one, and he was telling me that, you know, I'm his priority, and so we did share a kiss, and we sat out, we were watching the stars, and we shared another kiss. I wish she had told Dylan everything that happened. That's just my opinion. I wish she had told Dylan everything that happened. That way, if they came to movie night or the truth bike, everything would be out there. Unless the producers told her, don't tell him because we need you to sort of, it needs to be revealed later, or they just told her, only tell him you shared a kiss and that's it. Because their story about sharing a kiss doesn't make sense when they know that they went further than a kiss. So Dylan, I give him credit for asking her, are you sure this is all that happened? And she stood her ground. Yes, he tried to sway my head. And it's like, Sophie, it wasn't that hard. It really wasn't that hard for your head to be swayed. Unless there's bits that were edited out that we didn't get to see. It didn't seem that hard for you to suddenly forget about Dylan. Given how much grief you gave Dylan when he coupled up with Chrissy and you told him that if he kissed or did anything inappropriate with Chrissy in bed, you'd lose your shit. And so for you to be there and do what you sort of tried to sort of get Dylan not do, it doesn't make sense to me. It does not make sense. The fact that you went that far and you didn't have the decency to sort of come in before you sat down with anybody else. Soon after recoupling, she should have pulled Dylan for a chat. Hi, Dylan. I know I promised you that there was nothing between me and Zane, but sadly, once we got there and we shared a kiss, one kiss, it just proceeded and things snowballed, and this is what happened. I want to take responsibility for what I did, and I want to sincerely apologize to you for my actions. And Zane should have pulled Dylan and done the same. Zane should have pulled Dylan, had a conversation with Dylan in private to show respect. Someone you've been in the villa with since day one, you can't owe them that much respect to pull them aside. It doesn't make sense. Sophie then says, okay, I'm going to have a word with Zane. I need to have a word with Zane, as though to tell him off or something. And she goes up to Zane and she's busy saying to Zane, okay, just forget Dylan is here. If Dylan was here, what would you do? And it's like, seriously, make it make sense. Because she asked him, did you tell Kayla? Yes, I told Kayla. And you could see the excitement. So she thought, oh, I've got a chance there. Or did you tell her? And what did she say? Okay, so, all right, why didn't you do what you promised to do? And he's telling you, this man has shown you multiple times that he's not feeling you. What else do you want? You came into the villa, he was with Santi. He refused to give you a moment of his time. One, you then coupled up with Kayla and called Kayla a 10. So for him to suddenly turn around and tell you that, oh, I don't know, you're my number one. If you were his number one, why didn't he tell you before you left the villa? Why did it take you leaving the villa and you having sex with him for him to suddenly say you are his number one? And the way Sophie was actually saying to Zane, oh, you told me I was your number one. You told me this. Okay, forget Dylan. If Dylan, if it's just me and you, if I'm single, what would you do? What do you expect this idiot to do? He's told you multiple times he's not feeling you. He's now telling you he's not responding, that I'm not feeling you. What else do you need for you to understand that this man is not it? What exactly is it about him that has you so hooked that you can't think or do anything else? Make it make sense. I don't get it and I don't understand it. So then she went to the girls' changing room. She felt guilty and I think she was embarrassed because she expected him to say, okay, I've told Kayla that there's nothing there, so I'm happy to couple up with you. But he didn't say that. And so for her to then have a conversation with Mimi and say, oh, he told me that, he doesn't know whether he really liked me romantically or whether it was just that he was horny. He was horny. He wanted something and you gave it to him. That's it. Mimi has told you countless times how much Dylan really likes you and you've played with him. I hope the Love Island Australia producers are just as good as the Love Island UK and they bring in a girl for Dylan. The way Love Island UK brought in Josh for Mimi, I hope they bring in, Dylan, his own girl. And I want to see what happens to you when Dylan is getting the attention that he deserves and the attention that he's owed for being treated badly on the show. He's been treated badly because people have kept taking his partners and he has constantly been stolen and he's been given labels and you've sat there and you've watched it. And so the audacity for you to say you really like him, there's nothing between you and Zane, and then you go and you betray him, doesn't make sense to me. I'm so furious. I can't even think. I can't even say anything straight. I can't wait for the truth bike tomorrow because I want to hear and see what Sophie says. I can't wait. Anyway, thanks guys for watching. Please don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe and click the link in my video to watch my review from episode 18. Bye guys.